Yo, yo, yo. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Isaac,
And this is your boy Bryce.
and we are brothers on tennis. And folks, we've got another great interview for you today. We met this gentleman a few years back, and he was incredible, just entertaining, great person, great individual. Bryce and I knew at that moment, we're like, yeah, this dude is all
Right.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, we wanted to introduce him to you, the fam, because as you know, one of the things that we do is we continually try to show you and introduce you to people that really help this whole tennis machine go. I mean, tennis is so much larger than just the players that you see out there on the court. And Charlie is very instrumental in a lot of ways in terms of how we consume the sport of tennis. So I'm not going to give you a whole lot on him. He is the founder and the CEO of Sift Creative, which they specialize in content creation and video production and a lot of the things that we're still trying to learn ourselves. So we're going to let him talk about that a little bit. But without further ado, we welcome our friend Charlie Fox to Brothers on Tennis. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you, guys. That was a lovely intro. As you were kind of gearing up on that, I was trying to figure out who wasn't showing up today because I didn't think that was going to be hitting on me. I was like, this guy sounds awesome, but I appreciate that somehow that was my intro. So thank you.
And see, folks, that's why we love Charlie right there.
There it is. That's it. I'm going to just head home now. I am home, so I guess that doesn't really make any sense.
Doesn't really count. Charlie, talk to the folks about your background. Just let's start there and let's kind of build from there.
Yeah, I came from a tennis family. Didn't start playing until I was about 13, but my dad was a former pro back in the day. So I guess more of an amateur than a pro because he played before the game went open. So he played back the year he retired was the year that they decided to finally start paying some money to these people. So 1968 was his year of retirement, but he was a great player back in the day, NCAA singles and doubles champion, was ranked 4 in the US, won a tournament back in the day where he beat Emerson and Fred Stolle and Tony Roach and some pretty big names to win that event, and he got his entry fee back for beating Roy Emerson in the final with a packed crowd. So wow. The game's come a long way since then. He, after playing, ended up going into coaching, ended up coaching Pepperdine for 19 years and had some great players over the years, from Brad Gilbert on his team to some other guys like Marty Laurendo, who was a Canadian Davis Cup captain. But he's had a amazing career, and kind of when I was young and as a little couch potato and not doing a lot, and I was about 12, and he didn't really want to push the game on me, and I didn't really care for it. And I was 12 doing not a whole lot with my body. And my mom and dad are like, look, we don't care what you do, but you got to do something. And, if you want to go and play basketball, blah, blah, if you want to play tennis, dad will go out there and feed you balls a couple times a week. And I'm like, fine, I'll go play tennis. So, I played for about a month. He signed me up for a tournament, and I just got the bug from there. And I just really, I started playing hours a day and, got to a very, very low level college level player, walked onto a college team and then quit after about a month. So that was a really long run. And, but I've loved, since I kind of got that bug, I absolutely went headfirst into the game, just a tennis nut, getting DVDs online of past matches, and I would just take in everything that I could around the game. So ended up as an accounting major, as many people do when they don't know what they want to do with their lives. No offense to accountants. It seemed like a good, safe path. And I was like, yeah, figure. And then had this opportunity out of college to, kind of give a go on the tour. And ended up kind of interning in tennis and acting as a junior producer for the ATP. And basically over time ended up becoming a producer and a company owner, as not really sure how we got here. So quite a long journey and probably a long answer for a pretty simple question there.
That's a good answer.
Absolutely. We love those kind of answers.
Context there.
But you know what? I'm going to back it up just a little bit.
Back it up. Let's bring it back.
Because knowing your personality, I am very interested in knowing what type of game you had when you played.
It's a good question. I'm an all-around player. I broke my wrist. If you can see that, I got a nice little plate in there. But I had a two-handed backhand that was my better side, and I broke my wrist when I was 14 and couldn't hit two-handers anymore, and the one-hander just never clicked. So it was out of necessity more than anything of having to learn a volley and kind of play around. So all-arounder and not by choice. I'd probably be a grinder on the baseline, just dinking the ball around. So it was out of pure survival, became an all-around player.
That's wild. And and it sounds like we all have backhand stories, because I started with a one-hand. It didn't feel right, like you said. And I went to a two-hander. And Bryce, you know what your story is.
Yeah, I started with a one-hander. It didn't feel right. I went to a two-hander. It didn't feel right either. Oh. No, neither felt right for me. So I just kind of leaned into my slice backhand.
I lean into that a lot. There's a lot of leaning on the slice backhand, but yeah, I know the feeling. It's an uncomfortable one when someone realizes quite early that that's a big hole in your game, and they just keep peppering it. It's it's mean. It's not mean. Nice. It's not nice. Mean. Look, You can see I'm bad at that side. Just hit to the side that I like hitting to, and come at me through the front door, and don't just break me down where I'm already hurting.
So many of us can relate to that.
Absolutely,
I can definitely bounce a backhand or two before it hits the net. So, you want some tips? I'm your guy.
So, Charlie, I have to ask you, okay, the long stint that you had on your college team, talk to us about that 1 month. And what made that decision? What made that decision? You were like, no, I need to walk away.
Well, it was like you playing junior tennis, and it was like the pinnacle. Like, I want to play college tennis, and that was everything I wanted to do. And I was looking at schools. I was going to be kind of a very low walk-on like a low D1, or maybe play D3 or D2. And so I had an opportunity at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, where we lived and knew the coach. And he basically, I wasn't going to go to Cal Poly because it was in my hometown. And I told my parents, I'm out of here. But I did apply there just as why not? And it was kind of my best tennis option. So the coach said, look, I'll take you on as a walk-on if you're interested. And I was like, great, sounds awesome. So I did it. And after bouncing probably a few too many backhands into the net and doing the 6 a.m. conditioning every day, and being not just the low man on the totem pole, but quite far from seeing how I will be getting playing time, kind of started to have this early realization where I'm like, I could do this and I might play in like 2 or 3 years, but I'm not enjoying it. And it's feeling like a job. And I don't know, it's bizarre. I guess I had a little bit of clarity perspective at a young age to just go, I'm not going to be a pro and I'm not enjoying this right now. So why am I trying to do this? So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I quit because I could just see the writing on the wall not being great. And so don't generally like to quit things, but quit and ended up actually playing club tennis in college and absolutely loved it. I came on my first year and thought I was the absolute can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't know.
right.
I thought I was the shit. I came from the team. I'm like, playing club tennis with yeah, after like a tournament or two, I kind of realized like, yeah, this is more my level. And I ended up running the team and absolutely just made friends from that. And, we played nationals and just had a great time with all of it. So I still play now, play for fun. And, I look back and, I know people who played college tennis, and I know some of them, like the last day of, their senior day, they're like, oh, it's great. I never have to play tennis again. And you're like, that's a sad place to get to in the game.
Yeah.
So
It really
I'm
is.
glad I walked away early enough to still enjoy it. And thankfully for my wife, probably happy, because to put on running shoes and go for a run, just not my vibe. So to go chase a little yellow ball, I love doing that even now. So it's a great way to stay in shape. And yeah, I don't think I disappointed anybody by being, 12 on a D1 team. So,
Well, I tell you what, one thing I'm going to take away from this interview is the visual image of bouncing backhands into the net.
And I could, if you want to, and by the way, I don't just bounce them into the net. I can also hit the back fence if I'm really trying to hit it big. So, I like to be, open to how I miss the backhand. So there's a lot of, a lot of late ones too. And that tends to go wherever it wants to go. So yeah, I have a lot of variety in my misses.
Okay. So we will stop the bleeding here on the tennis talk.
Thank you. As I just told you, please stop peppering the weakness as you just keep putting knives into
it. So let's continue to move down the timeline. So, tennis is done in terms of being a player. We're pursuing the accounting degree. So how did video production and content creation and working for the ATP, and how did that all come together?
Yeah, it was pretty wild, actually. My dad, as a sports psychologist, probably a little context there. I realized I didn't touch on sports psychology, but very briefly, he was a sports psychologist after playing amateur tennis. Coached college tennis, and then after college tennis, worked with a variety of pros and juniors in sports psychology in tennis. And so one of the players that he worked with back in the day was Justin Gimelstob, who former player who I think he's back in the game working with Agassi now. And so Justin back in the day was starting a little company and had me come on as an intern and an assistant. And that's where I kind of got my first start, and started as a junior producer for the ATP tour. And from there, I was basically just an accountant coming from school, and I didn't know anything about production. And Justin was nice enough to just toss me into this world and just say, figure it out. So it was a lot of figuring it out early on. My first US Open, I was handed a 5D, which is a camera that's like a DSLR, kind of a nicer, smaller, like a photography / video camera. And I was handed that camera and said that you're Roger Federer is coming to the Lindt store today, and you're going to go film this interview with him and also do the interview. Yeah, that was not, it wasn't pretty.
Really?
And
Wow.
yeah, no, it was, yeah, the CMO of the ATP was there, and didn't realize that I didn't know anything about anything. And when he saw me like with all the wires and I was trying to put things in things, he kind of hid in the corner and later on told me that he was so embarrassed being next to me because like Tennis Channel was there. They had audio, producer, camera, you know, ESPN, all these big crews. And then the ATP junior producer was there with a little camera doing the interview himself. Like it was a mess. But so that was the first couple of years of my job of just grinding through and learning the ins and outs of video production, and very thankful that the ATP let me learn a little bit and get better over time with them and their product, because it was kind of an interesting transition, I think, in the world with broadcast content and going more digital. And so if it was now, I probably would have been fired in the first like day or two of working. But in that time, it was just everything was in a transition that they gave me enough leeway to, and Justin did as well, to learn my skills and not absolutely ruin anything too bad. So it was real learning back in the day, but quite a you probably, some players will remember some pretty bad interview setups from back in the
day. Charlie, that is hilarious. I mean, but you know, with everything, there's always growing pains. There's always that learning that you have to go through. I mean, as you were going through that learning process, did you, I mean, were there some ahas or things that you kind of were like, okay, this is what's going to allow me to go to kind of that next level? What was sort of that whole thinking process through that window of time?
It was a strange like progression where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I was I loved tennis. And so, you know, I could come in and just from an interview standpoint, already I knew all the guys. I followed the game to such a level that, you know, I could tell you who was top 200 in the world and knew the games, knew how they played, knew a little bit about all their backstories, because I just took in so much of that content growing up. And so that was, you know, as much as I just was useless in a actual production knowledge sense, I didn't realize that, I had a lot of the kind of pre-skills of a producer that, you know, I would just come into interviews and, you know, at least be able to maneuver in those with or without research, because I knew it inside. So that was kind of my anchor to a degree. And I was lucky enough, like Justin gave me some tips on, you know, ways to ask better questions, and even like, as I started doing more of the interviews, realizing I need to listen more, and actually the best answers started to come from the follow-ups, and realizing that you can ask a great question and then you don't get what you want. And then I would just move on and ask the next question. And then you realize as you start to actually listen in these interviews and hear those little nuggets, it's a conversation. And, you know, you can have the best of plans, but a lot of times, you know, the interview will take a life of its own. And as you're in that mode and as you're hearing it, you know, I really started to enjoy that, that kind of dynamic of not quite knowing where you're going to go for an interview and coming in and seeing how it develops. And so that kind of growth came probably after the first couple of years of working. I started doing more post-producing, where when I first started, I was mostly in the field and asking the questions. after a couple years, I started doing more post producing as well. And that time really helped me with my skill set when I was there with an editor and going through like making a feature, making a piece for TV, and like, wait, the guy didn't give any context in his answer. Like, I need to ask him to give, hey, can you put the question in the answer? Or he gives a great line when you're getting into the edit, and I'm like, did he say anything else about that? And they're like, no. I'm like, gosh, I should ask more. So it was a lot of, as I was getting into the edit, seeing how these pieces were taking shape, that probably was the most helpful part to help me as an interviewer, just start to, piece together and realize I'm not going to ask 20 random questions. I'm going to pick a couple key topics and then use the questions to really grow and dive in more specifically. So it was a journey, but learned a lot in that time.
Well, and following up a little bit on your initial interview experience, what I've noticed is I've met people at tournaments that are on production teams, and they're on these teams because of their technical skills. They are not even really tennis fans. They couldn't tell you much about tennis. Now, someone like you who was coming in as a tennis fan, were there players that maybe you had idolized coming up that were like dream interviews that you got a chance to interview in these type of roles, or, how did that play together?
Yeah, I was very lucky. I came out of school and I started as a junior producer for the ATP and did that for 10 years. So went from junior to just a regular producer to even starting a company, which I'm sure we might talk about at some point, but that continued to create content for them. And so over the years, been lucky enough to interview all my idols and kind of people, when I first started, it was even the guys that weren't my idols. It was just, I watched every single one of these guys on TV. So even, like a, world number 80 and number 90, like I wasn't starstruck and, but I was just like, it was all kind of like a kid in a candy store where, I could just, I'd say the initial ones were probably the big dogs, like Federer. The first time that Lindt store, I was so tight. Like I'm holding the microphone, I'm like, Roger, you take a step back, and he takes a step back, and I'm trying to get him in the step and repeat, which is a nice big background, and I'm like, but I don't know how to frame an interview, so I can see the wall behind. I'm like, Roger, can you take a step back, maybe a step forward? So that was probably about as scared as I could be. And, those first few years, I got to interview Federer and some of these guys a couple times. And it was those years, like I was tight every single time. And, but being around these guys more and kind of doing a lot more with all of them, it really humanized all of it. And, I still, it's great to talk to them, great to see them. It still is a little bit of a kid in a candy store, but that feeling of like the butterflies and like, that luckily has gone away over the years. And, there's a lot of those guys, Roddick and others that, those were early on ones that really stood out.
And so, Charlie, you were with them for 10 years. You were with the ATP for 10 years, you said. So at what point do you feel like you started actually finding your groove and you felt comfortable, in that process? Because again, you said you started out, it was a learning process. When was that point where you were like, okay, I'm here and I feel like I got this? When did you feel comfortable?
Yeah, it was a couple years in. It was starting to get my groove. I'd say probably 3 or 4 years in, I really started to feel like I had I wouldn't say great, like I knew what I was doing, but I knew enough that I knew how to ask questions. I knew how to construct pieces. Once I got past that initial feeling of like, I just hadn't, there was just so much to learn that you don't know what you don't know. And I was, I early on, I think I got the field producing quicker just because the questions got better over time, but you can, you show up and you put the microphone in front of players' faces. And if you have a good editor, they can kind of make something out of something. So I got protected a bit from the editors as I was building that skill set. But I'd say, yeah, after a couple of years, once that confidence came that I could be tossed into any situation and I could figure out a piece out of it, that was like where I started to feel good. And so, that kind of came because those 10 years with the ATP, I was doing their weekly TV show, ATP Uncovered. And so I was going to about 20 to 25 tournaments a year. And so I got the reps pretty quickly out there. And, even with the players, that feeling started to go away because, after 20 events and you interviewed John Isner 10 of those times, it starts to get a little more into the flow. And so once I, with those, what used to scare me back in the day is I'd be, you'd be on site and then the ATP would be like, hey, we have this charity thing that's happening over here. Can you go interview the players? And we want to put it into the show this week. And I'm like, I didn't prepare for that. And I don't really know what so once I felt like I could be tossed into any one of those and just make something for the show, that's when the confidence really started to get there. It's still not great, but it got passable.
Well, you know what? I absolutely remember that show. I used to watch the show. And so I think about Isaac and I go to maybe 4 tournaments a year, and that feels like a lot. So to hear you say 20 to 25, that's crazy to me. Were there any kind of like crazy fun experiences that you had when you were on the road? I mean, obviously we don't want you to share anything that you can't share.
I won't. I mean, it was a very fun time in my life. It was a mix of, what I really ended up loving and I still love is like, I do like creating, but I'm sure you guys know from going to the tournaments as well. It's like, it is the tennis family, and it's great seeing guys like you, seeing other guys in the media, seeing players, seeing coaches. Like, the more you travel, the more you get into these, it's like, it's fun seeing and talking to everybody. And for me, that was like what I absolutely loved doing. And so, after probably 2-3 years as well, that confidence grew, but also the players started to recognize me, know me. And so it was just that aspect of, because they saw me at 20 tournaments a year, they started to realize that I was part of that circus and part of that inside aspect where they were starting to look at me less like a media and interview and more like, okay, you've got your role here, just like a physio does, just like a doctor, a chair umpire. And so that part really helped across the board. And yeah, I mean, on an experience front, like the best thing about Uncovered, which I can talk about, is we're essentially like bringing the ATP Tour to the world. And so it was so fun. Like, the ATP have these stars programs at most tournaments where the players do some big activity, where some are going to do clinics, but the big dogs and their big marquee players, they tend to set up some sort of iconic photo shoot or take them somewhere in the city to get like, an experience in. And so what we were doing as Uncovered was filming it and bringing that forward. And so we got to take in all of these incredible experiences, like, in Brazil, we went to Christ the Redeemer after they closed it down at night. And we went with Chilich, and our camera op, actually, they climbed up the Redeemer and went inside and like went to the top of the arm, and like no one gets those experiences. But we went from there to, we took a van down to Carnival, and the tournament had given the opportunity for the guys to go walk in Carnival. And so we got to go, we're filming it. So we're in there, we're all dressed up. We're in the van driving from Christ the Redeemer down to Carnival, and the tournament like gives us all like some clothes, and we're changing in the car, and we get out, and it's things like that were so fun. Going to I think with Rafa and team, we went to the top of like this the Montreal Olympic Tower and did mini tennis up there. But there's probably 30, 40 of those that I got to do over the years that were just like so much fun from an experience standpoint. And yeah, I mean, they got to live that life through kind of the player's eyes. So that was probably more of the things I would tell my parents. And then the nights out and all the fun times of, with the guys, and, we're in China and they lose early and there's nothing to do in Chengdu. And we're like, hey, let's go get some drinks. So, there was definitely a lot of those. And, I was in my early mid-20s, and it was a perfect time to be enjoying that. And now the thought of being up past 11 just starts to make me even feel tired, which is so sad.
Sad truth about getting old, Charlie.
It's a sad truth. I actually enjoy going to bed at a good hour and not feeling bad the next day, which is just when you've made that turn.
Exactly. Charlie, do you have one ATP Uncovered episode that is like your fave, the one that you're just like, that's my one?
It's less of an episode. I think it's more like the things we got, like what Uncovered was, for, if you don't know what it is like, it was a magazine style show. So there were, anywhere from 3 to 5 features that went into the show each week. And every feature was a bit different. And so for me, it's more of a feature type that I really love doing. I'd say like the off seasons, and going there and spending time with the guys, like at their home, and doing home visits and seeing the way they train and go about things, just for me was like, as a tennis fan, incredibly awesome. But even just as like taking it in and seeing how they go about it, it's like we do like Taylor Fritz, and then I remember the next day we spent the day with Taylor Fritz and filmed with him. And then the very next day we flew to Miami and spent the day with Dominic Thiem and saw his training, and just like to see the differences between even guys and the way they take care of themselves, how hard some of those guys would go in the off season. You could start to even see some of the guys to be like, oh, I can see why, like, this guy's going to be very good because he's got the game, but he spends 8 hours on the court and off the court during the off season. And so, did that with guys like Zverev, Alcaraz, Shapo, Felix, the Bryans, probably Nishikori, Sock. Like, there's quite a bit of them that it was an awesome time. And like those type of features, also because the guys are so chill and you get to kind of get them when they're not in media mode. Those were the best. I think probably 2 years ago we did Monte Carlo, and we did Felix one day, Holger Rune the next day, Musetti the day after that. And then we flew to Spain and did Alicante with Alcaraz and Ferrero for 2 days. And it was just me and a cameraman, our guy Matthew, who we did all of these experiences together over the years. And, it's just a 2-man crew going from city to city and just checking in, getting all our bags, arranging things with the players. Like, those off seasons are just, still my favorite things. And probably the best might have been Tandil we did with Del Potro, and went down there as he was coming back from one of his injuries a few years ago, and spent 2 days with him in Tandil. And he took us into the mountains, and we had mate with him and his friends, and we had some drink, took us to some like bar side hill, and we had drinks and dinner with his friends. And like those are for sure the ones that stand out the most, of just like awesome tennis fan kind of pinch me moments of like, wow, this is pretty unique.
That is that set of experiences you had. You'll probably never forget those.
No, yeah, I loved it. I mean, it's still, and it's also just like the relationships that you build from those. You spend like, you're with a guy like Alcaraz for, you're filming with him for 5-6 hours during the day, and then we take a train over to, he's going to get some award, and we're on a 2-hour train ride, and it's like, it's just to be able to not just spend that time, but even just talking to these guys when you're not rolling, and getting into their mind and what they enjoy and what they like those are the things that really stand out. And for me, as a, when I'm watching it on TV now, it's like the rooting interest of like the guys that I really know and like just makes it exponentially more interesting.
Right. So let's continue to move down the timeline. So apparently at some point, that kind of situation ends, and there's the creation of Sift Creative. How did that happen?
Yeah. I was actually continued working with the ATP with Sift as well. And so had an opportunity as they were looking for new support and a new supplier, and had the opportunity to actually start Sift and bring a lot of the kind of the same team and aspect into that workflow that can delivered for them over the years. And so it was an awesome, I feel really lucky because they really helped me and get started with Sift, and put their trust in kind of what I had done with them and over those years. And so had the opportunity to kind of start Sift with the ATP. And with that, we started to use those relationships, not just with the tour, but as we were traveling and at the tournaments and, working with different people in the game, started to like ATP were a client, but we weren't exclusive to them. So started talking to different people, like I'm sure you guys know, like Penny and Judy from Taste of Tennis, and incredible. Like we used to go and cover it for the ATP. And then at some point I was like, hey, do you guys want to do some stuff together? And so it's starting to work with people like them, International Tennis Hall of Fame, and doing content for them, which we still work with them today. But it was kind of using those building blocks early on with the ATP. And as that time grew, also working with brands and networks, and luckily using those relationships with players and kind of their comfort with our whole team to, I guess, parlay or push that into other types of contents and mediums.
Yeah, I saw the model that you had shared, Charlie, which I thought was amazing, because the fact that you have tours, again, organizations, the networks, the players. Are there any players specifically that you're working with as it relates to Sift? And because I think I had saw a couple of names up there, but did any exclusive?
Yeah, we work. We do a mix. We help some players, and we also work kind of exclusively with some players. So like Gael Monfils, we helped him a little bit this year with his socials, and we're talking about maybe developing some content together. Bethany Maddox-Sands helped her with her event last year that she put on in New York, and work with Sam Querrey currently our team runs his socials with him, and also as we edit his content and do he'll send in videos, our team will edit them, and then it's a very collaborative process with him, and he's quite involved. And I don't know if you've seen his socials lately, but he is a funny guy, and he is so just open. I mean, he's self-deprecating. He's got no ego about things, but he just has a really good sense of funny. And it's just been, that one's been really fun seeing that relationship this year take life. And, I told Sam, we did with him in Indian Wells, and I'm like, why couldn't you have done that? Why didn't you do this when you were on tour? Like, people didn't realize how funny you were. And like, this would have been, but at the end of the day, it's like, maybe the fact that he's this hidden funny gem now, he's it's caused a bit of mystique and intrigue into him. So, that's some of the players, but we're in some conversations with more, and it's definitely a side that we enjoy doing just because we like the players and the different people, but also like we can see, there's kind of these holes in the way that some of the brand and the partnerships and the negotiations happen, that we're trying to kind of help arm players and agents in some of these brand conversations to kind of find that middle ground between what the player wants to make with content, but also what the brand wants to make with content, and kind of acting as that translator between what each party is looking to get out of the relationship. And so, cautiously optimistic that there will be more to come, but that's a few of the players. And I don't think I've answered a question in under 10 minutes today. So
it is all good.
I'm realizing, like, I hope you have some good editing here, because I don't know if anyone's still here listening, but I hope so.
They will.
No, yes, this is awesome. But what's funny about what you just said is we recently interviewed Craig Boynton. And we love Craig. And the funny thing is, he was talking about how funny Sam was. And he said, there was a period of time that he was working with both Sam and Stevie Johnson, and how very different they were, how Stevie was very serious and very focused, and how Sam was just a hilarious guy. And you're right, watching him when he was on tour, I would have never guessed Sam Querrey had that type of persona.
Never.
No. And it's like, it's just, and Stevie too, actually. Stevie is one of the funnier guys as well. And he comes across very, like, the difference, I think, but probably between Sam and Stevie is Stevie, and like when he was in competition mode and knew it, he wasn't joking as much on the court. And I think Sam, just was always joking to a degree, but just whatever reason in the media sense was just not like that, bringing that on camera as much. And so it's, both those guys, and you get those guys together, and it's like, they're funny guys.
Yeah, he said that Sam always had a good story. He definitely said, Sam's got some stories. So
he's got filled with them. And, he just, if you go look at his Instagram, he just tore his Achilles playing pickleball, and is finding a way to make that incredibly hilarious. Of, he's like, oh, this is going to be so funny. Like, dude, okay. He's trying, now I got to figure out how to take a shower. Can we film that and do it? So, he's crushing the content, and, everything. It's like turning into Larry David, where, anything that happens in his life is becoming like, some comedy gold that can be done there.
Oh, that's too funny, man. Too funny. It looks like Bryce fell out for a second. He'll be back. But Charlie, as far as SIFT goes, give the folks more information just in regards to this company that you have formed and what it's about, and all the good things that that you're planning as it relates to the company. Welcome back, Bryce.
Hey,
thank you.
Have you.
Thank you. I need to make sure that internet bill went out in the mail.
It's still coming. It's just any day. It's SIFT, we work a lot in sport. We do work outside of tennis, but our main specialty is within tennis, and I'd say racket sports as a whole, where with the growth of padel and pickle are areas that we're actually starting to grow right now. But the hope is to try to just help bring some of the fragmentation, specifically in tennis, together a little bit more. So we work with a few of the different stakeholders in the game, from networks like Tennis Channel and creating shows for them. We work with players, like I've just mentioned. We still do some work with the tours, and we also work with the brands and some of the organizations like the Hall of Fame and others. And so working with all of them has just been really eye-opening as well, to see that some of the different problems that each stakeholder might feel is unique to them, or is kind of, I don't know how we can solve this. Because we work with the different entities, we can see to a degree some of the almost invisible barriers that are causing some of the issues. And, we're really trying to help bridge some of these gaps and give brands a little more what they need, but players need content and don't really want to dip into their pocket to spend on that. So, how can Tennis Channel get what they need, a brand get what they need, and the player also what they need, and everybody's getting better content in our hope, where we know what we kind of take that in a production sense, all of these little inputs, and try to come up with shows and content and series that give everybody what they want. And that's kind of where we're starting to get to this year, which has been this kind of, up to this point, we've worked with all the different entities, and this point, and hopefully moving forward, we're really trying to figure out how to find those synergies and help connect some of those different dots.
And what's a question that I wanted to ask you is, because since you have such a unique and global perspective of the sport, we hear a lot of talk about tennis not being as popular in the US as it is around the world. I'm just interested in your thoughts and your opinion on why, and potentially what the US needs to do to build tennis.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, definitely traveling around the world, you can see some of these countries, like especially in South America, like the fans are just so passionate. They know all these players. Like certain countries in Europe, like you just go and it's like they're packed early in the tournament. And so I don't know if the US will ever get to that point just with tennis. I don't know. I mean, maybe it can. I think part of the problem is we have some very big sports in the States that are a part of our culture already and a big part of our framework. And I think, there's definitely things tennis can do to help themselves, but I also think there is a level that, I don't know if tennis will ever be an NBA or an NFL, or because you also have all those fans that aren't going anywhere with those sports. And there's only so much time in the day that people can take in current or new sports. And so if you're a baseball fan and a basketball fan and a football fan, like, yeah, you might turn on the US Open in tennis, but I don't know if you're going to start just diving into tennis content. And so, I mean, that's a little more pessimistic of the growth, but I think without being a top 3 sport in the US, there's plenty that tennis can do to continue to grow the sport. I think one is, and this is, it's having top players and winning slams, and, we've been very, everyone talks about it, but we've been very blessed with, from Serena to Sampras, Agassi, you name every generation up to this point. And we don't just have some Grand Slam champions, like we have most of the GOATs, or at least up there. We don't have a lot of the Europeans, or any of them, but we do have, we have a great list of greats that I think that's probably one part of the problem, where because in the US, tennis fans and just sports fans in general are used to being probably at the top of sport, where we win you win the World Series and we are the world champions. Like, does anyone else play this game? So, we even have sports in the US where we're the pretty much only ones that play it, and because we're the best. So, when no other country plays your sport, like, you can tout yourself as the world leader. And so
all world.
So tennis, with how international it's gotten, like, I think there's a big part of it where, there's probably ways we can help our pathway. And, I think Italy's done a great job, and they're a great example of how to, and I think they've done it through the creating more challengers and creating more domestic tournaments, where the cost to become a pro is not as high. And so, in the US, if you want to be a pro, it's like the amount of travel you need to do internationally, even in the US, to go from coast to coast. It's not as easy to move around and grow and build. And so I'd say that's one area, which is the pro, kind of not just the landscape, but kind of the pathway to becoming a pro. If we can make that easier and continue to help kind of the shotgun approach, where it's trying a lot of different ways and empowering teams, from guys who want to do it private to guys who want to be part of the USTA system to, and I think the more that we can help the variety of ways people get into the game, I think that will continue to help build the pro tour and give ourselves just a better chance of having the odds of some more champions. I'd say the other way is just, continuing to figure out how we can be in common culture. And I think a big part of tennis is, because we're so fragmented and because so many different entities are trying to get 5 minutes with a player, you're kind of slicing this pie so thinly that there's not really, a pie, or it's like there's not enough meat on the bone for any one big meal. And so it's great for tennis fans, they're getting a lot of content, but to really storytell, as Netflix, the Netflix Breakpoint series is showing, is like, you need more, and you need to really dive into the personalities and the stories a bit more. And with the players and the limited time that is left after everyone takes what they need in the game, it's hard to really get those stories in. So I think if we can continue to, push these personalities forward and tell more of the backstories and kind of humanize the players a bit, it's going to help grow the game, because sports is about caring who wins and loses at the end of the day. Right. And if you care about who wins, or you care about who's losing, then you're more likely to want to, when you're turning on, you want to, I like that guy. I like her. She's so funny and she's playing. Let me go watch her match. And when you start watching, then I like that person's. Who did she play? That was her game is, I like the way she hits her slice. She doesn't hit the fence. And that guy. And so it's like basically giving ourselves more ways for fans to find the sport, from the stories to, if we have top athletes, like, I don't know if there's one thing that's going to do it, as much as it's probably a few different improvements across the game that will hopefully help bring us back to closer to that old promised land from back in the day.
Charlie, I do want to say that is one of the best answers. We've asked this question of several people. That is one of the best answers, and I think you're so right on so many points. But I think an area where you're not correct is we do have some of the Europeans, because we got Monica Seles, we got Martina Navratilova, we got Yvonne Lendl, and rumor has it, I guess we're getting Camila Giorgi. So I mean,
so maybe is your solution? What? Okay, here's the thing: if Federer becomes an American next year, do we get those slams?
I'm claiming it all.
Claiming it all. Do you get that cutoff? Like, is that, or is it? And if he wins any slams from this point forward, then we get in on it.
Well, fortunately, those other Europeans that I named, once they became Americans, they were still winning. So we got to get at least credit for those, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. So I guess you're saying we got to go a little younger, maybe Alcaraz.
I like that.
I like it. He speaks English.
That'd be a good one.
Improved significantly. Like especially like, I mean, in Miami, he loves it out there. Like, it's perfect.
You gonna go? Funny.
Yeah, I would love to see your sales pitch there. How would you go?
Oh God, Charlie, really quickly though, with SIFT, I just want to make sure that we clarify for the listeners and viewers out there. When did you start SIFT, and talk to us about kind of what are your objectives for 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, started SIFT in 2019, and yeah, the objectives are really, it is that synergy push in the sport. Yesterday we had a call with one of the agents, one of the player agents who reps a few of the top players, and just starting to go, just having those conversations of what are the brands that you're talking to? What are the brands that are interested in content with your players that you haven't been able to find that common ground yet? And, next week our team's going to go work on some ideas and things that can arm that agent to come back with the brand that all of a sudden hopefully helps get some of those deals over the line. So, the network, the athlete, and the brand, that little triangle is kind of the goal this year, and trying to see if we can help connect those dots a bit.
That's awesome.
Wow, that is awesome.
That was an answer under 10 minutes too. So we got it in. I think I might have made it under 2 minutes.
Look, this is why your interview is so entertaining, and we are so honored that you have taken this time to speak with us today, especially with everything you have going on the home front and everything. We're so appreciative. We'd like to just give you this opportunity. Is there anything that you wanted to share with our audience that we maybe didn't cover or touch upon?
No, I'd say keep watching tennis, and don't you dare turn off Brothers on Tennis. That's it. I'd say that's what I would make sure that they know, because if they're still here and if they're still listening, then they've already accomplished the second part, which we like. But we could start the interview. If you want to put this at the very beginning of the interview too, maybe that will, I don't know.
We'll make this a sound bite on Instagram.
Good. Just flip it, and there you go, with a little thumbs up seal of approval.
Isaac,
no, you turn it off.
Any final words from you, Isaac?
Not at all. The only thing is that Charlie, just like Bryce said, reiterate, thank you for taking the time. Like I said, when the minute we met you, we knew you're a good dude, man. And thank you. Likewise, just for guys, all the collaboration and everything that you do. We appreciate you a lot, my friend.
Likewise, and thank you guys. I mean, honestly, the game needs this, which is people who love tennis, who may or may not have had the opportunity to work within the game. You guys have come in and made something out of nothing, and I have a lot of respect for that. And really, like, that growing the game is not just about going to the people with 1 million followers. Like, you've got a loyal group of people who love the game, and you're growing it in your way. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm very appreciative for guys like you, because you're probably second-handedly helping my business. So, selfishly, I'm keep it up. Keep turning out the content.
Awesome. So, family, this has been an amazing interview. This is our friend Charlie Fox, founder and CEO of Sift Creative. And we hope to have you on again in the future, because you truly, and we're not just saying this, truly have been one of the most entertaining interviews that we probably have done in 4 years.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I really hope that's not true, but for your guys' sake, but I will take that compliment anyway. So thank you. And yeah, anytime you want to have it again, go look at the numbers first and make sure no one's you still had viewers at the end of this interview. And if you do, we can do it again. And if you don't, my feelings aren't hurt. They are hurt, but just don't tell me that part. Just don't call again.
All right, then. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. On behalf of the podcast, this has been your boy, Bryce.
And this is your boy, Isaac.
And we are Brothers on Tennis. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, guys. Keep up the awesome work.